Former LMPD detective Brett Hankerson and his attorneys are back in the federal courthouse today for a civil rights trial in the Breonna Taylor case. It's our top story here at 5. Good evening, everybody. I'm Connie Leonard.
And I'm Doug Proffitt. Brett Hankerson charged with depriving Breonna Taylor of her constitutional rights and using excessive force. The night Metro Police shot and killed her.
The jury selection process continued today behind closed doors. Isaiah Kim Martinez and senior photojournalist Alyssa Newton are following this all for us. So, Isaiah, we know deciding on a jury may take at least another day, right?
Connie, Doug, it will. At least through Thursday is what we're getting this week, which could bring opening statements to as early as Friday. But again, nothing confirmed. We actually haven't even seen the judge appear in the courtroom at all over the past couple days. All these interviews of these potential jurors have been done in private. Now, I do want to touch on Brett Hankerson and his attorneys. He has not spoken to reporters, as myself and some others have filmed him walking in, essentially asking him, are they going to keep the strategy the same? Because it's worked for them thus far. Here was how that played out here this morning.
Mr. Hankerson, do you expect to testify again? Protecting your fellow officers, is that going to be your primary case?
Back in federal court, where in his past trials, Brett Hankerson's lawyer said he was returning fire to protect other officers during the Breonna Taylor raid. Hankerson walking ahead of his 3 attorneys, entering for a second day of jury selection, picking the 12 people who will decide his fate. Juries in the last 2 trials, both choosing not to convict him for charges connected to the deadly raid on Taylor's home back in March of 2020.
It's going to be a really uphill climb for them to get 12 people to find him guilty.
Louisville attorney and former federal prosecutor Brian Butler is not involved in the Hankerson case, but does represent former LMPD Sergeant Kyle Meany, who's also federally charged. Butler speaking on the challenges facing the DOJ to prove Hankerson violated Taylor's civil rights when he fired 10 shots into her apartment after fellow officers came under fire.
They did what they thought they could to win, and they didn't win. So now they already know what the defense is going to do. They know what the defense has done both times. I think it's going to be very difficult to get a different outcome for them.
Attorneys privately working through a jury pool of 150. We're told it could take until at least Thursday to finalize a panel of 12 with 4 alternates. Thomas Clay, who represents former LMPD detective Joshua Janes, the man accused of falsifying the warrant that led to that raid on Taylor's apartment, explaining to me why Hankerson's case matters so much.
I don't know what's going to happen if he's acquitted, if Mr. Hankerson's acquitted. I don't know if the Department of Justice will continue the prosecution of Sergeant Meany and Joshua Janes, or whether they will say, look, we've had enough of this and we're not going to pursue any further prosecution. I just don't know the answer to that question.
And we have heard Brett Hankerson himself in Jefferson Circuit Court ask the question, this was back in 2022, why did you do what you do? You might not remember his answer. We'll have you back up to speed. We're going to show a little bit of what he said years ago. That's coming up here at 6. Doug, Connie.
Okay, Isaiah, thank you. Outside the federal courthouse in downtown Louisville as we wait for that trial to begin. Now, a retired Duke Energy boiler house building in New Albany is set to be demolished this weekend, but it's unclear exactly when this implosion is going to take place.
Right, and it is just the boiler building. It's not the towers, but the Gallagher power plant's been around since 1958, but stopped operations a few years ago. It sits along the Ohio River in a rural area of New Albany.
WHAS11's Gabriel Gonzalez spent the day talking to local residents about what they can expect, and he's going to tell us now exactly what they're going to be bringing to the ground. Gabriel?
Doug, Connie, at some point this weekend, the boiler house at the Gallagher power plant here in New Albany will be imploded. The 2 chimneys that you see behind me, those will be dismantled at another point later on. Now, this is the letter that residents who live within a 2-mile radius should have received in the mail, and if not, you should receive this letter in the next few days.
We didn't know anything about it until you came and rang on the door.
Coming back from a weekend trip, New Albany resident Jamie Budd was surprised to learn about Duke Energy's plan to get rid of a decades-old building. He lives within a half-mile of the retired Gallagher Power Plant, which is the site for this weekend's implosion. Duke Energy has plans to implode the boiler house, and while Jamie isn't concerned about the noise, he has other worries.
I think more of a concern that I would have is the chemicals and whatever else they built that with. If there's any asbestos or anything like that, that may end up getting kicked up in the air.
He pointed out soot still on his dad's house from years when the plant was open. It has not been operational since 2021. Just a few blocks over on Mariana Drive, 25-year resident Gary Stoy says life will go on whether the plant is there or not.
I don't see how it's going to affect us one way or another.
You don't mind that it's going to be gone?
Don't matter to me.
He says he got a letter in the mail a few weeks ago detailing those plans.
You know, in this modern time, they take buildings down in the middle of in town, big sky-rise buildings. I'm sure they know what they're doing.
A spokesperson for Duke Energy said the demolition of the plant has been carefully and safely planned and executed, following all rules and regulations, including protecting the environment. Adding internal equipment was also removed, and the building was thoroughly cleaned, removing all coal and ash. The company is reaching out to 6,000 homes and businesses located within 2 miles of the boiler house. So we have all of the details of the implosion and contact information for Duke Energy on this article on our website, WHAS11.com. Now, the company is also working with local law enforcement to make sure that residents stay safe in the implosion time. Also, it's very important to note that there is no public viewing when that implosion happens. Live in New Albany, Gabriel Gonzalez, WHAS11, on your side.
All right, Gabe, thank you. This is great to get the early word out. Of course, as we know, sound travels through the valley here in Kentuckiana, and whenever they bring that down, you're going to hear it in all parts of the area, including probably out into Oldham County. Well, a name change coming to part of an Indiana roadway, a major one. The Indiana Department of Transportation in Indiana is designated Indiana 265 as now an interstate, known as Indiana 265 from north of Jeffersonville over to the East End Bridge in eastern Jefferson County. It'll now be designated an interstate. INDOT says this will create a more functional roadway system, and now they're starting an improvement project in the corridor, including new guardrails, repainting signs, and a lot more. This work will start around the 28th of October.
Tuesday night, the Clarksville Town Council unanimously passed a resolution supporting a federal push to make the Falls of the Ohio a national monument. According to the National Park Service, national monuments preserve and protect our nation's archaeological heritage, and they can be created by presidential proclamation or congressional legislation. Right now, there are 134 national monuments across the U.S. They're things like battlefields, old ruins, or natural wonders. Right now, the Falls of the Ohio is already a national landmark, historic place, wildlife conservation area, and Indiana State Park. Now, if granted this newest designation, the Falls of the Ohio would be Indiana's first national monument.
Gorgeous day, very cold across Kentuckiana, and once again, as we look at those great skies, we are set for an amazing fall weekend in Kentuckiana. Connie, I've noticed that the leaves are really starting to change fast. Seems like everything's sort of on time going into fall this year.
Yeah, they are. I'd like to see a little bit more color, Ben. Is that going to happen soon?
No, it looks like with the drought that we had here recently, the leaves will fall off more quickly, and also the color is not quite as vibrant. But nonetheless, still over the next couple of weeks, going to be peak of that fall foliage, and sometimes these little freezes can help that happen a little more quickly as well. It was our chilliest night and early morning of the season so far as we dropped down to 38 in the city, but notice below freezing in Brandenburg and Hardinsburg, 29 the low in Brandenburg, so a little frost here and there, and down around freezing in Springfield and Hodgenville, and it could be a touch colder tonight. So it was a frost advisory last night to protect the plants. It's a freeze warning tonight to protect those sensitive plants, as well as we could be a couple degrees colder early this coming morning, Thursday morning, thanks to just a light breeze and a most mostly clear skies. So temps right now are in the low to mid 50s, pretty much 50s all across the board here. We'll have a mostly clear sky. We do have a few clouds out there right now. So for this evening, definitely some jacket weather out there, as most of the evening after sunset will be in the 40s, and it'll be waking up to that frosty start here in the 30s. But tomorrow afternoon gets a tad bit warmer as we'll head back into the 60s. So that low 37 degrees in the city, outlying areas colder, 57 at noon tomorrow, and that high is 64. And how does 70s and sunshine sound? We'll have that weekend forecast coming up.
And that's the sound of a new development coming for the Fern Creek Fire Department here in Louisville. After annexing the Highview Fire Department's 3rd station back in 2023, it'll soon become the 73rd station for Metro Louisville. Well, right now, Fern Creek is the nearest staff department to respond to any emergencies southeast in Metro Louisville. But soon that's going to change. Our Jose Alonso and photojournalist Jessica Farley tell us why the expanding area needs more protection.
The Fern Creek Fire Department serves a large part of southwest Louisville, but as the community continues to grow, so does the need for emergency services.
The big green spot right here is McNeely Lake.
Fern Creek FD is located within Metro District 23, which is represented by Jeff Hudson. He pointed out that every post-it note on this map represents approved developments of housing, along with how many units are being built.
We want to make sure that we're putting the infrastructure in place so that we're minimizing negative impact on traffic, minimizing impact on safety.
Part of that safety plan is renovating Fern Creek's annexed building in Highview in southeast Louisville. It was originally designed for volunteer firefighters, but will soon host a 24/7 staff along with new sleeping quarters. The area south of the Gene Snyder continues to see new suburban housing.
Every bit of this, the Heritage Creek, City of Heritage Creek, all of this was all farmland. There was a big farmhouse set over here. The park was about the only thing out here.
The redevelopment of the campus will ensure first responders won't take long to battle any future fires. In Louisville, Jose Alonso, WHAS11 on your side.
And the expansion project is expected to be finished by July 1st next year.